Hey, what's happening, everyone out there? Welcome to the Fumble Sports Baseball Show, happening every Wednesday at 7 p.m. on Twitter Spaces and on YouTube, also broadcasting in our Metaverse studio. Hope everyone's having a great night. Hope everyone's having a great week. And of course, a first week of baseball action. It's so nice to have America's pastime back on TV every single day. Nothing like getting baseball action to fill up your day, whether you're at work, you get home from work. Always nice to have that as a nice part of the routine. Certainly some surprises early in the season. We'll get through every team, every division. We're going to go division by division and break it down. Before we get to that, though, the first thing we obviously need to talk about is how successful the new rules have been. We've seen the pitch clock now implemented. We've seen a few violations. But all in all, Theo Epstein, who's the architect of these new rules, he absolutely hit this out of the park, pun intended, because there's more action. I feel like the ball is in play more, which was the intention. You're certainly seeing more stolen bases, and the games are just enjoyable. Now the only challenge is where before the question was, how do I carve out 4.5 hours to watch my favorite team play? Now the question is, am I going to miss the game? If I don't tune in early enough, am I going to miss too much of the game? Right now, I'm tuning in at about an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes into a game if I miss it, and it's already midway through the sixth. That's a great sign for where baseball wants to be with these new rules. Just the pace of play, more entertaining, more fun, and it's certainly not hurting the dynamic between the pitcher and the hitter. And that's what, as a true baseball fan, I love the most, is that chess duel between one pitcher, one hitter. What am I going to throw? What location? What's the sequence? What moves am I trying to bait you into? And that still exists. Now it just has a shot clock. And I think that's good for the game. I was skeptical in the past, but I think the game has adopted these new rules incredibly well. I think the hitters are still slightly slow to adjust, and I don't blame them. After you have a foul ball, there is a tendency to have a routine where you kind of reset yourself. That needs to be sped up now to a second, 2 seconds before you need to be back in the box. And I understand for some hitters like a Manny Machado, a Rafael Devers, that's a little bit slower for them. But ultimately, I don't think it's going to hurt these stars or hurt other players. I think athletes get accustomed to rules very well. Just give them some time, give them some reps. But I think baseball hit a home run with it. I think this was a great thing. Happy to see it being accepted well, not just by the typical baseball fan. Because if you're like me, you love baseball no matter what's going on. If it's a 5 hour game or it's a 2 hour game, you're going to watch. But for the casual viewer, the person who's just flipping channels and comes across their local team or comes across a national game, are they going to tune in? The pace of play and the style of play that we're seeing is going to encourage that behavior. That's what's going to grow the game of baseball, and that's what's so important. So wonderful thing there. So happy to see those new rules being successful. That really is about the pitch clock. The bases we still need to talk about. We're getting a lot of stolen bases. Whether that continues, obviously, we need a larger sample size, but those larger bases are making a difference on the base paths. It's going to be interesting to see what kind of data we get back once we get into maybe May, later into the season. If that's something that baseball wants to adjust, I don't know why they had to change every base. If you want to do first base so you don't have that potential, back of foot or ankle collision when a runner's barreling down at first base. But second base, did we really need to make that, as they've jokingly said, a pizza box? I feel like it was unnecessary. But baseball is going to make rule changes. You take them all at one time. Put enough sample size out there, just like anything in baseball. It's about sample size and then coming to some conclusions. That's to the rule changes. Now to the action we're seeing on the field. Let's start in the American League East, because to me, that is the number one story right now in baseball. And it's the Tampa Bay Rays. They're 6-0 right now, and they're playing good baseball on every level. Offense playing well. Randy Arozarena is one of my favorite players right now in the game, and you're seeing that the WBC was really helpful for some hitters who came in with a nice groove. He was definitely one of them, but they're getting strong pitching performances right now. They're just not giving up runs. And when you're able to hold opponents to just 13 runs when you're scoring 44, great run differential. Tampa Bay Rays are a dangerous team. They're atop the AL East right now. How long that stays the case, I think that's going to be a battle all year between them, the Yankees, and potentially the Toronto Blue Jays. But for me right now, the Rays' early start is a great sign because that's a team and an organization that has depth. A team that's battling that question of depth right now is the New York Yankees. They found some things with Brito, who pitched earlier in the week, the rookie right-hander who gave them some great innings. Can he duplicate that throughout the season? Unsure, but they have some injuries in their rotation, and it is concerning if you're a Yankee fan because you spent a lot of money to be able to have depth in your rotation. Maybe this is almost a good thing, and it becomes an extended spring training, and these guys actually are going to ultimately pitch fewer innings, which saves their arm and maybe their best innings for later in the year. But there is some reason to be concerned in the Bronx if you think this starting rotation, as it's being scotch taped together right now, can win both a divisional title and ultimately a pennant, because the Yankees will go as far as their pitching. If the Yankees don't have pitching, it doesn't matter how good Aaron Judge is, how hot Giancarlo Stanton is, how dynamic this lineup is, who they add throughout the season. It will be about the starters. The bullpen, that matters only so much because to me, Aaron Boone is always going to be too reliant on his starters because he's not a great manager. He is really not a great in-game manager of the pieces that it takes, the starter bullpen dynamic. He's not great at it. That's fine. He has other strengths. He stands up for his players well. I think he's really good in the clubhouse, but that in-game managing, not his strength. And therefore, he needs a really loaded starting rotation to carry him through. Because if he doesn't, the Yankees will run into trouble because the Astros, really strong rotation. I think they could run into trouble against Cleveland because Bieber and one other starter, and all of a sudden, there you're down. But Garrett Cole is amazing. He has continued to be amazing. Unbelievable start that he's gotten off to. Another great performance on Wednesday against the Philadelphia Phillies. He was worth the money last year, or a couple years ago, rather. He's proven it. So no concern at number one, but it is starters 2 through 4 for me that are concerning. And Nestor Cortez, a lot of Yankee fans try to tell me that he's a number 2. He's not. He's a quality number 3 starter, but you do need a Severino. You do need a Rodon. You do need someone who's going to be that workhorse at number 2, because if you're just going off of Garrett Cole, that would be concerning come playoff time. But the Yankees are currently in second in the AL East. They've gotten off to a fine start, obviously going up against the Philadelphia Phillies, who are reeling a little bit. You're happy to get out of that series. You're happy to play them now if you're the Yankees, because the Phillies are going to be a better team later in the year. As you continue to look down the AL East, the Baltimore Orioles, 3-3, had some opening day success at Fenway Park before losing the next 2. Then went to Texas and played a red-hot Rangers team, got 2 out of 3 out of that one. So they come out of 500 after the first week. If you're a Baltimore Orioles fan, you just have optimism, but you understand that this isn't the year because, again, you don't have enough pitching. A lot of young talent, great young lineup. Adley Rutschman that dude is a star. That dude is a star. Love watching him play. He reminds me of Joe Mauer. I said this to someone close to me the other week. I think, especially when he hits from the left side and obviously his catching skills, but I think he's better than Joe Mauer because I think Joe Mauer kind of shrunk in big moments. Great player, unbelievably talented. Rutschman is a standout star. I think he can hold down a lineup, and he certainly knows how to command a staff. The question is, can the Baltimore Orioles ever give him a staff? I don't like their starters. Obviously, it's about that team's willingness to spend money. That goes to ownership. Are they ultimately going to get new ownership? So a lot of questions for Baltimore, but for now, good start to the season because even though your run differential is 0 after 6 games, you have to feel like you are competitive against the best and the worst in baseball. And if you're a Baltimore Orioles fan, that's good because for a long time, you were the worst team in baseball and you weren't competitive against anybody. So making strides, continuing to look throughout the AL East. Toronto Blue Jays 2-3 start. They have another game later after this broadcast, but They just got off to a bit of a slow start. I'm not concerned about the Toronto Blue Jays at all. I think this is a really talented lineup. They've added to their rotation. So for a number of reasons, Toronto being in fourth in the AL East, I don't think is concerning at all. I understand that their run differential isn't great. Their pitching hasn't gotten off to a strong start. Offense may be a bit slow, but I have a lot of faith that this lineup for the Blue Jays is loaded, and that especially come the summer months, Toronto is going to be a team to be reckoned with. And so I'm not concerned about the early start. The team that needed to get off to a hot start that didn't, that should be worried is the Boston Red Sox. Boston, you are done. You needed to get off to a raging hot start for me to have any faith in this team, but you don't have enough pitching. You don't have any bullpen, and your lineup is way too reliant on Rafi Devers. If Rafi Devers has a 1 for 4 day or an 0 for 3 day, there is no way that the Red Sox can score 5 runs, in my opinion. Now, I understand that Duvall got off to the hottest start in baseball. Adam Duvall, who was, I actually did think was a great pickup by Chaim Bloom, good signing, but he's not going to, the fact that he put up those numbers and you still came out of the week at 2-4, bad look. Bad look. You had the best offensive player in baseball. Meanwhile, who was the 6th best offensive player in baseball? A guy named Xander Bogaerts. 3 home runs, 7 RBIs, 5 runs. Wish he was playing in Boston, if only. But Boston Red Sox fans, you can't have nice things anymore because your ownership group is not invested. And what's interesting is you look at the AL East, and who would ever think that the Tampa Bay Rays are a better run organization right now than the Boston Red Sox? Not they're producing better talent out of the minor league system. They're a better franchise. Right now, the Boston Red Sox are way too worried about making better accommodations at Fenway Park for concerts and for other things than they are about the product on the field. But if you think that Justin Turner and Kenley Jansen are going to turn the Boston Red Sox into a winner, I have a bridge to nowhere to sell you, because they are going to be in the cellar of the AL East for the entire season. And there was a lot of optimism. I think the Red Sox were the number 1 bet team in Vegas to hit their over wins total. Man, this is why Vegas builds hotels. And this is why fans lose money when they bet. Because the Red Sox right now, they are not a 500 team. And I think their win total was set at 81. So you got to feel good about the under. Way to go, Vegas. Let's transition away from the American League East and look towards the American League Central. Again, we're going to go through every division. If you want to join the conversation, feel free on Twitter Spaces, broadcasting at Sports Fumble. And of course, we're also on YouTube, But Fumble Sports. You can check us out in our Metaverse studio. To all those watching on YouTube, hi, giving you guys a big wave. Appreciate all the support you guys show us. Looking at the American League Central, this is a division that obviously, I think of each division as kind of its own horse race. Who's going to get out of the starting gates the fastest? With this division, it didn't matter who did, because ultimately the Cleveland Guardians are the best team. The Minnesota Twins are going to be kind of right there. The White Sox are in the middle, and we know the Tigers and the Royals are going to be in constant rebuild mode. So it was just a question of, would the early, first 2 series of the season reflect what we'll probably see throughout? And what's interesting is this is a division in which the opening is going to go the way I think the entirety of the season went. Cleveland got off to a good start. Cleveland has good pitching. They have better offense than you think, but especially with the new rule, the shift, everything else, or the lack of a shift, I think the Guardians are going to be a really good team, because Terry Francona is one hell of a manager. And also, they've built a roster that I think takes advantage of analytics as well as anyone else in baseball, Tampa Bay Rays being another one. But the analytics now aren't about hitting home runs necessarily. It's back to finding holes on the field, hit it where they ain't. And I think they have a number of really good contact hitters who can produce runs. They're going to steal bases. They're going to apply pressure to opposing defenses. For a number of reasons, look out for the Cleveland Guardians. Now, that's about during the regular season. Come postseason, might be a very different story. because they get in that one and done situation. They become too reliant on Shane Bieber. But Cleveland got out to a 4-2 start. I think they're a really good roster. I think they're going to benefit from the way the game is going to be played in 2023. So I think this is a great way for them to start. And as for the Minnesota Twins, I'm still learning who they are. That rotation, I actually love how they've built the roster. It's a really good batting order. It's a deep team. They have some pieces. But again, how much pitching is there? You don't have a dominant number one like the Cleveland Guardians do in Shane Bieber. So I think the Twins slotted at number 2 in this division makes a lot of sense. White Sox at number 3. I believe Eloy Jimenez went on the injured list earlier today. They just can't get things right. The White Sox, to me, are a team you want to play with in like MLB The Show. They have so much talent. They're so loaded. You watch them in real life and they get injured. They just get hurt. They're a toy you can't take out of the packaging without a leg coming off, without something getting busted. And it's unfortunate because so much talent. They went through that kind of tanking period of time. And unfortunately, it hasn't amounted to the success that it really should. And they're running out of time. Because Tim Anderson, Yohan Moncada, they already lost Jose Abreu in the offseason. He obviously went to Houston. So how long can you keep that team together? You got Andrew Benintendi in the offseason. That's the consolation prize. They started the season 3-3, run differential of -6. I think that's the kind of team you're going to see this year. I think they're going to be around 500. I think they'll beat up on the Royals. I think the series that they're going to have against really good opponents, I think they're going to underperform. And as for the bottom 2 teams, the Detroit Tigers and the Kansas City Royals, when does the sun come shining through? If I'm a Royals fan, I actually have a bit more hope than if I'm a Tigers fan. But for both of these teams, I think their start reflects what the ambition of the season is. Let's get a good draft pick. Let's shift over to the AL West as we continue to go through every division in baseball after 1 week. We're going to be doing this throughout the MLB season here at Butt Fumble Sports on Twitter Spaces, at Sports Fumble. You can also, of course, check us out on TikTok, Butt Fumble Sports, and on YouTube. Butt Fumble Sports is our YouTube channel. We're here in our Metaverse studio. And looking now at the AL West, this is a division I'm super excited about because I'm really hoping that this is one of the sneaky competitive divisions in baseball. For the last few years, this is the Houston Astros. This is a runaway freight train of talent and at times talent that was being assisted by banging on garbage cans, but that's a separate story for another day. But this is a division that no matter how competitive it may appear to be, I think we all knew who was ultimately not just going to own the division, but beat down everybody else. So they just didn't look as good. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think the Houston Astros do have some vulnerabilities, and you're seeing it that they're off to a 3-4 start. They're not as good as everyone thinks. They've got some great hitters. They have some good pitching, but they are not a juggernaut. And look out for the Texas Rangers, because Chris Young, really, really smart baseball guy. He was a good pitcher. I think he's going to be a much better front office leader because I think his intelligence of the game is greater than his arm talent was. But he is building something in Texas. They put together a lot of what seemed like random free agent pieces 2 years ago. It fits pretty nicely now. If you have a top 3 of the rotation, that's Jacob deGrom, Martin Perez, and Noah Syndergaard. Sorry, not Noah Syndergaard. What am I saying? Nathan Eovaldi. That's pretty solid. Righty, lefty, righty. Good strikeout rate. As long as deGrom stays healthy, that's the question. Can deGrom stay healthy? But for a number of reasons, I think Texas is a team to watch because if I had concerns about anything, it would be their pitching. They're going to score. They have added enough bats to that lineup where they're going to get their runs. Texas has 36 runs right now. They got a run differential of 14. That's the most in the division. Impressive. Off to a fast start, scoring a lot of runs. They beat up on the Phillies pitching. And the Phillies, that's one area where they're actually healthy right now, is in their rotation. And the Rangers just put a whooping on them. You can see Texas has some offense. So if they can get DeGrom out there every fifth game, if Perez and Eovaldi pitch to the level of expectation, not crazy, not all-star, but level of expectation, that's a team to look out for. Meanwhile, the Angels are going to tempt us. The Angels are always going to give us that little striptease where we think they're going to be a playoff team, and we're going to hope for it because we want to see Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani in meaningful games. I'm not going to believe it. I'm not going to believe it now. I'm not going to believe it in July. I'm not going to believe it until September because the Angels tease us. That's what they do. The Angels like to taunt and tease. And so I'm not going to believe it. With the Texas Rangers, I see something. As long as they can keep DeGrom healthy, which massive if. But the Rangers are a team to look out for. Angels, don't believe it. Oakland, throw them away. They have a negative 17 run differential. The Oakland A's are an embarrassment in baseball. I feel bad. Oakland fans are some of the most loyal fans in the game of baseball. I'm amazed what they put up with. They really are the fan base out of Major League where they are so loyal, even while their ownership is giving that team nothing to be successful. And it shows. It just shows. I mean, they get a walk-off win, and you can hear them closing the concessions because there aren't enough fans in that stadium. It is not a good look in Oakland. I don't know what the commissioner should do, but it is a bad scene. And that is a part of this AL West story because this is really only a 4-team race. The Oakland A's, there's no Moneyball magic to be had in this one. So you can slot them down at the bottom, which is currently occupied by the Seattle Mariners, surprisingly. 2-4 start. Their run differential is 0, so it's just one of those where they've kind of been unlucky to start. But the Mariners, again, that's a team that needs to get off to a hot start. They need to collect some wins early in the season because the expectation is they're fighting for a wild card spot, not the division. If they're going to have any chance, especially now that the Texas Rangers are better. Seattle might actually benefit from the new scheduling. There aren't as many division games. Now, you don't get Oakland as many times, but you don't have to face Texas as many times, and that's not as winnable as it has been the last few years. So for a number of reasons, Seattle needs to feel the burn a little bit. There needs to be some emphasis on playing winning baseball within the next 2 weeks. I know it's just the first week of the season. You get off to a fast start. It's about banking wins. Baseball really is a race in so many ways to 90, 95, and 100 wins. You hit certain benchmarks, you're going to get there. It's not now as much about just beating your opponent. It is about getting to a certain win level. And if the Seattle Mariners are going to get there, they've got to bank wins early because it's going to be challenging throughout the year. That's the American League, breaking it down every division. We'll shift over to the National League and look at the National League East. Appreciate all of you joining us. Make sure you go to our website, buttfumblesports.com, to check out our baseball content every single day. We put out MLB betting trends every day. The best plays to make when it comes to bets, those are based on favorable trends and stats for the starting pitchers of the day. We also put out stats for which hitters have the most favorable matchups against the starting pitcher for that day, who has a good history of home runs. If you like to place those bets, I'm a big fan of placing a bet on the over-under of hits, runs, and RBIs for individual players. We put those out every day. Make sure you go to our website, buttfumblesports.com, and check those out. Really helpful in finding some good betting information, taking advantage of it, because there's action every single day. This is why we love baseball. It's not just for the thrill of the game and the love of the game. It's also for the ability to cash some tickets every single day. Looking at the National League East, the obvious team that everyone's excited about is the Atlanta Braves, and for good reason. They're healthy, they're talented, they're young. They've done a brilliant job of locking up this young talent, so it isn't a question of is there going to be drama over this player or that player leaving. No, this team is full throttle. I love their pitching staff. I love their offense. They're going to be fast. They're going to put a lot of pressure on opposing catchers. And they've also got pop. Atlanta Braves, to me, I think are the best team in the National League. I know some people are going to say the Dodgers. I know some people are going to say the Padres. To me, it's the Atlanta Braves. And they are out to that kind of start. 5-1 start, 18 run plus 18 run differential. They're only allowing 14 runs. They've scored 32. I mean, they are the best team. I think they're pretty close to being the best team in baseball. You have to give it to the Rays right now because the Rays haven't lost. But I think I'd rather have the Atlanta Braves if I had a series between those two in a World Series right now. Now, we have a number of months to go, so we don't have to worry about that just yet. But I'm really impressed with what I've seen from the Atlanta Braves. And the rest of the division isn't off to that kind of start. Philadelphia Phillies are in trouble. 1-5 start. And they are banged up, and they don't look good. Kyle Schwarber looks good. Turner looks fine, but that rotation does not look as good as it should. I think this is definitely a early panic mode if I'm a Phillies fan. Last year, that was Cinderella's story. All right, it's back to sweeping chimneys for you, Cinderella. No more ball this year. We're going to bury you in the basement of the NL East. And that's what's happened. You are behind the Washington Nationals. Yikes. Negative 24 run differential. I know you played the Yankees, but not a good showing in the Bronx. You got 1 out of the 3. But at times, not nearly as competitive as you want to be, given where you thought this team, this roster was going to be. Ugly for Philadelphia. And this is a team, watch out, Dombrowski, he makes crazy moves. He does crazy things because he is not into rebuilding. So that's a team that could go after some talent for their rotation, fill some holes in the roster while, the Rhys Hoskins injury is just devastating. Changed the entire trajectory of the Philly season. And I don't blame Philly fans for being caught off guard by that injury and having a 1-5 start, kind of passing that off as the excuse. You can't live with that too long because injuries happen throughout the course of the year. You need to plug that hole. And Dave Dombrowski, go make a move. Because right now, I'm not seeing the Phillies as a team that can compete in the NL East, let alone, Washington Nationals 1-5. Not surprised that they're off to a bad start. It's a bad team. Expect them to be the bottom. Philly, don't worry. You'll still be ahead of the Nationals. But the Mets are in a strange place. They have some injuries of their own. Verlander had to go on the IL, and he says it's not any reason to be concerned. It's minor. Okay. When an old pitcher tells you to not worry, that's when you worry. I am concerned about Verlander because the Mets are not as good as we think they are. They have a lot of names. They have a lot of brand names. But are they really that deep? They've lost their closer. You've now lost one of your 2 stud top of the rotation pitchers. And can that lineup consistently score? Can they consistently get runs? Mets are 3rd in the division right now. Miami Marlins are 2nd. Both teams have a 3-4 record, so that's really about alphabetical order, between Miami and New York. But the truth of the matter is, Miami is off to the kind of start that I think they want to, which is play 500 ball, be competitive in games. I think the New York Mets, they did not look good at times in that Brewers series. Max Scherzer got lit up. So reasons to be concerned in New York. I know it's just April. Funny enough, I will say this about the New York Mets. When they get off to a fast start, New York Met fans come out of every nook and cranny to tell you the New York Mets are playing great ball and this is the year. And then they fade away. And then they collapse. Roof caves in. Maybe this year is good, Mets. High expectations, you disappoint early. You can be a comeback story. That might be better for you. You might be in the horse race that is the National League East. Maybe it's better if the Mets are the horse that come from the back of the pack and work their way to the front, because I don't know if they can run the full distance as the favorite, especially against the Atlanta Braves. I think the Braves are more built to be a front runner and not be fazed by it, where New York, nah. I think this team is going to have some challenges throughout the season. I still think they're a playoff caliber team. If they're healthy come October, dangerous, because that 1-2 punch is as good as anything in baseball. But getting there between April and September, October, that's going to be a long, long journey for them. That's not going to be the case for the Braves. Braves are a dominant team. Look out for Atlanta. And if you play DFS, if you like playing fantasy baseball, look to the Atlanta Braves. They're going to score runs. They're going to be aggressive on the base paths. We'll talk a bit more fantasy in a little bit, but Atlanta Braves are a good bet day in, day out. Let's shift over to the National League Central as we continue to go through every division of Major League Baseball after the first week. But Fumble Sports will have this MLB show every single week where you can join us, jump into the conversation, share your thoughts about what's going on in America's pastime, and of course, let us know what's happening with either your fantasy team, your DFS approaches, and of course, your bets. We put out bets every single day on our website, butfumblesports.com, to try to find the best trends and the best plays to make some smart bets on Major League Baseball action. Looking at the National League Central, Milwaukee Brewers, red hot start, 5-1, 20 plus 22 run differential, and you can see what this team is capable of when it's healthy, when it's playing at its best. My only concern is I think they're a bit too reliant on Christian Yelich, and I think he can at times be a bit more streaky than I would like. It has way too many strikeouts for me, but this is a really good team. Corbin Burnes, what a great pitcher. Love watching him. I really like what the Milwaukee Brewers can be, but I still need to be convinced a little bit that they're going to be able to compete, not against NL Central talent. I don't think that's going to be the issue. I think it's National League talent overall. But Freddie Peralta, Corbin Burnes, Wade Miley, not bad. Freddie Peralta, K's strikeouts per 9 inning, 10.5. Good start. Good start to the season. They have a decent bullpen, the great closer. I just don't know how good they're going to be against, again, the Atlanta Braves and the Dodgers and the Padres, and that's going to be the challenge all year. But as of right now, Milwaukee, red hot start. And funny enough, who are they ahead of in the NL Central? Pittsburgh Pirates. Now, the Pirates got the benefit of going into Boston and playing the Red Sox and taking 2 out of 3 in Fenway Park. Who saw that coming? The answer is me, because the Red Sox are terrible. But the Pirates, they're getting more production. Brian Reynolds. He's got 4 home runs already. He's off to an amazing start. And this team is playing baseball, again, the way you want to in 2023. Be fast on the base paths, make some good defensive plays, and pitch well, especially in the clutch moments of the game. In that series with the Red Sox, there were competitive games at times, and then the Pirates were the one who put their foot on the gas pedal and really ran the Red Sox right out of the game. They have speed. I don't obviously think the Pirates are going to be able to keep it up throughout a majority of the season, but if you're a Pirates fan, just going 4-2 in the first week of the season has to feel like a win. reason to be hopeful in O'Neal Cruz. If you don't have fun watching that guy, his throw, every ground ball he takes, his throw from shortstop to first base, I have never seen any position player ever throw the ball harder from their position to first base ever. He throws it at like 100 every time. He doesn't need to. It's probably a greater risk than it is like a good play. It's just unbelievable athleticism. He is by far a top 10 player to watch right now in baseball. Unbelievably talented. And I love that his first name comes from Paul O'Neill. Like, that is just too good to be true. Some things in baseball like are perfect. That is perfect. You got to love it. Continuing to look at the NL Central, Cincinnati Reds 3-2, off to a fine start. Good for them. Don't expect much, but way to get off to that above 500 start. Chicago Cubs 2-3. They have a lot of new pieces. Dansby, Swanson, or I'm obviously they got Cody Bellinger as well. Dansby's off to a decent start. 6 runs, no home runs, 2 RBIs. 500 average. Can't complain about that. And a low strikeout percentage, low strikeout rate, 8.3%. But Chicago Cubs, I'm just not crazy about them. I obviously think that I like Stroman at the top of their rotation, but they don't have enough pitching in the starting rotation or in the bullpen. So, and then the St. Louis Cardinals, who are kind of surprising at 2-4. I thought the Cardinals would get off to a better start. I'm not going to put too much into the first week, small sample size, but new age, no Yadier Molina. Pujols, whatever. That was the fun circus act. But no Yadier Molina is a big deal. They've allowed 32 runs so far in the first 6 games. That's the most of any team in the NL Central. Cardinals need to be a better team when it comes to pitching and defense. Or otherwise, the Cardinals will not be the wild card team that people think they are. Because I do think the Milwaukee Brewers are right now the best team in the NL Central and should win that division. That's the NL Central for you. Wrapping that up. Big shout out to Adam, big Milwaukee Brewers fan. Hope he's having a great time tonight. Appreciate you listening in. For all those other baseball fans out there who are listening in, make sure you join us on Twitter Spaces every single week. But Fumble Sports. You can find us on Twitter at @SportsFumble. We will be talking about every single team, every division, everything you need to talk about when it comes to baseball every single week here on the MLB Weekly Show at But Fumble Sports. We're going to jump into the NL West now as we continue to make our rounds through the divisions. And it's only been 1 week, and yet, as I mentioned before, it's just a lot of fun. It's nice to have baseball back on television. It's nice to be able to watch games. And as I mentioned before, it's nice to see games played at a competitive pace. And one division that's going to be highly competitive between the top 2 teams, Dodgers, Padres, the race is on. But these teams are off to very different starts. Dodgers are 4-2, Padres are 3-3. But the Dodgers have a run differential of plus 25. Meanwhile, the Padres, -3. Not what you would have expected from the Padres. Their offense hasn't gotten into gear yet, only scored 25 runs. Pitching, I don't have as much a problem. I don't expect the Padres pitching staff to be as good as people think it is. Blake Snell, Yu Darvish. I have concerns that those guys are not going to quite be the version of themselves that they were in past seasons. But they haven't quite gotten the offense. Xander Bogaerts is off to a red-hot start. We talked about that earlier. Manny Machado needs to figure out the pitch clock, but I'd like to see the San Diego offense start to flex a little bit because it's going to have to carry the team. But the Dodgers, raging hot start, and one of the reasons, Julio Urias, 12 innings pitched. He's 2-0 so far. K per nine is 9. He leads baseball in WAR for a starting pitcher. 1.5 ERA, just a great start. Unbelievable. And if he is able to be that front of the rotation guy, goes a long way for this team because he's finally reaching that age of maturation. He was a prospect for a number of years. They treated him like Dustin May as someone that they could turn to as a fourth or fifth starter. Now it's time for him to be a one or a two. He needs to emerge, and he has so far. Dodgers off to a great start. Pitching, offense. Dodgers are just a great team. They're loaded. And the Padres offense needs to hit. Ahead of them, behind them rather, is the Arizona Diamondbacks at 3-3, Giants at 2-3, Rockies at 2-4. All those three teams have a negative run differential. They haven't found their offense yet, and they're going to be hammering away trying to fight for third place behind the Dodgers and the Padres. That is our trip around the MLB standings, going through every single team, and of course, looking at what we can kind of take away from the MLB season so far, which teams are succeeding, where they need to make moves. Looking towards some of the stats early on, I mentioned Adam Duvall, number one hitter right now in baseball. 2 home runs, 7 runs, scored 9 RBIs, 0.7 WAR. Great addition, but what else do the Red Sox have around him? Meanwhile, the second best hitter is Will Smith. 3 home runs, 5 runs, 10 RBIs. A couple other notable players that you want to consider if you're looking towards fantasy. Brian Anderson of the Milwaukee Brewers off to a red-hot start. Matt Chapman, third baseman for the Toronto Blue Jays. We mentioned Brian Reynolds a little while ago. Xander Bogaerts, again, another standout. Yohan Moncada has certainly put it together so far in the early part of the season. Wander Franco having a great start to his year. Paul Goldschmidt, Ian Happ, and Kyle Tucker, all three guys that if you play DFS are consistently getting you points. Gleyber Torres, someone else who's off to a pretty good start. He obviously has some pressure on him. There was talk about a trade. Gleyber Torres is someone you may want to look to. Now that Josh Donaldson left today's Yankee game with a hamstring injury, so you should expect Gleyber Torres is going to slot in almost daily into that second base or DH position. So at third base, they're going to put IKF and LeMahieu, but it means Gleyber Torres isn't going to get as much time to rest or be in that in a rotational situation in the lineup. Mookie Betts and Mike Trout kind of finish out the top 20 when it comes to hitters. So definitely those are some of the bigger names that you should be looking at for DFS and fantasy. As for pitching, Urias, Luis Castillo of the Seattle Mariners, Framber Valdez of the Houston Astros. He's come out with a really great start to his season so far, 1.5 ERA in 2 starts, though he does have an 0-1 record. Shane Bieber, not surprised. Jeffrey Springs made his MLB debut, and he was really impressive in his start. Got the win for the Tampa Bay Rays, and you should, if you can, if he's still available in your fantasy leagues, go try to pick him up. He is someone you want to stash and add to your starting rotation. Dylan Cease off to a strong start. He has another start later, I believe tomorrow he's got another start. So want to see if he can continue his success from his first outing. Garrett Cole, back-to-back great starts for him and the New York Yankees. Shohei Ohtani, he is the man. He was impressive in his second start of the season on Wednesday. Sandy Alcantara, Cy Young winner in the National League last year for the Miami Marlins, has been impressive in 2 starts. Not as many strikeouts as maybe you'd like, 4.3 per Ks per 9, but his ERA slots in right at 1.84. Guy is outstanding, top of the rotation stuff. Another starter you may want to consider, Drew Rasmussen of the Tampa Bay Rays, Nick Lodolo of the Cincinnati Reds, someone else you want to consider, and Shane McClanahan of the Tampa Bay Rays, off to a phenomenal start. So those are just a few of the players that you want to look at for DFS and fantasy. Appreciate all of you joining us. Make sure you're following us on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. That's at ButtFumbleSports. And of course on Twitter at SportsFumble. Looking into some of the series this weekend, the Texas Rangers are in Chicago to play the Cubs. Expect that wind will play a factor. You got to like the over, but make sure that wind is blowing out. So check weather reports. In April, Chicago is a tough place. Make sure that you're getting better weather. If it's warmer, you got to think the ball's going to fly. Could be a good over opportunity on a number of those games. Seattle is in Cleveland to play the Guardians. Should be a very competitive series. That's one I probably don't want to go to when it comes to a bet because I do think those teams are really a coin flip, game in, game out. Houston Astros are in Minnesota to play the Twins. Should be some offense in that one. Again, you may like the over in that game. Should be a lot of runs scored. St. Louis is in Milwaukee. Big series for the Cardinals as they try to get out of the basement, be a bit more competitive in that NL Central against the Brewers. Big series for them. The Padres are in Atlanta for what will be the Sunday primetime game of the week with the Atlanta Braves. Should be an unbelievable star-studded matchup. Juan Soto obviously has a history against the Atlanta Braves. His stats, keep an eye on those for player prop bets. Could be some betting opportunities there. The New York Yankees go to Baltimore to play the Orioles. This is the first time these two teams will meet this season. They moved those fences back in Baltimore last year. I don't think it's going to matter. Giancarlo Stanton and Aaron Judge, expect them to get some homers. Baltimore definitely gives up a lot of offense. So look for the Yankees to get some good runs, good run production if you need in fantasy from some of those bigger bats in the New York lineup. The Blue Jays are on the West Coast to play the Angels. Battle between Vlad Guerrero Jr., Mike Trout, and Shohei Ohtani. The Marlins play the Mets once again. This time it's going to be in Queens. The familiarity between those two teams, know that's going to favor the hitters. Every time there are two teams that play each other in a shorter period of time, always favors the hitters. So if you're looking towards anything, consider the over. Consider the Mets, too. They have some history against the Marlins pitchers that's successful. The Reds are in Philadelphia to play the Phillies. Could be a good opportunity to take the Phillies on the money line. They should know the importance of this series. They're at home. Could be a good bet on Phillies money line. Royals are in San Francisco to play the Giants. Giants are the better team, probably the better money line bet. Not going to touch this one, though, unless I'm going to sprinkle it into some parlays. Boston is in Detroit to play the Tigers. Two dog poop teams. Don't touch it. Don't know who's going to come out. You would think the Red Sox, but you might be leaning into the brand a bit too much on that one. White Sox are in Pittsburgh to play the Pirates. That's an interesting matchup. All of a sudden, the Pirates, like I said, are playing much better baseball. Might not be a good betting opportunity unless you want to take the Pirates if they're an underdog at home. That plus 1.5 runs could be a good opportunity on the Pirates throughout the weekend. The Dodgers are in Arizona to play the Diamondbacks. Again, a series that if you like DFS or fantasy, the Dodgers have a history against Arizona pitchers. Expect a lot of offense. Mookie Betts, Max Muncy, Freddie Freeman. They have familiarity. Should be a lot of runs scored for the Dodgers. And finally, the Nationals and the Rockies are doing battle. Again, two bad teams, but it's in Colorado. Expect the ball to fly, especially if you're loaded up on some Rocky hitters. We're going to close out the show tonight with a couple of call your shot predictions. These are our predictions for the next few weeks of baseball action that we will revisit later in the month, later in the year, see if we got things right. Who will be leading the AL East by May 1st? I'm going to say it's going to be the Tampa Bay Rays. I think the injuries to the New York Yankees pitching staff will hold them back a little bit more than people think. I think the Rays are going to ride this hot start in April and in May, and they will ultimately have that lead early in the month of May in the AL East. Who is my leader for the American League MVP come May 1st? Well, I still think it's going to be Aaron Judge. He is off to a fast start. I love what he's done. He's really picked up where he left off. He's found ways to cut down on his strikeouts, and he's going to continue to drive runs in. So I still think the early favorite, at least through this first month of the season, will be Aaron Judge. I'm curious to see where the Toronto Blue Jays come out because watch out for Vlad Guerrero Jr. Yordan Alvarez and Kyle Tucker are also two players I do have my eye on as we get towards the second month of the season. Where in the NL West standings will the Padres be by May 1st? I think they're going to be locked into number 2. I'm calling my shot on this one. The Padres are going to have a mighty tough time getting ahead of the Dodgers. Dodgers off to a really fast start, so I think the Padres are going to be locked into number 2 in a month. Who will have more wins come May 1st? The Cubs or the Cardinals? I think it's going to be the Cubs. I don't like what I'm seeing from the Cardinals so far. I think the Cubs' new additions have brought an injection of energy and definitely offense to Chicago. I think the Cubs could get off to a slightly better start, and the Cardinals could continue to struggle through the first month of the season. And finally, our last call your shot prediction. Who will have more wins by May 1st? The Mets or the Phillies? Met fans, I know things look down, but they're not as bad as what things are in Philadelphia. So I do think the Mets will have more wins over the next 3 weeks than the Philadelphia Phillies. That wraps up our show for this Wednesday night. Appreciate all of you guys listening, joining, sharing your comments, and of course, make sure you follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and on YouTube, But Fumble Sports, and on Twitter. Sports Fumble is where you can find us on Twitter. Our website, butfumblesports.com, has content every day. When it comes to baseball, we put out betting trends every day, as well as the best matchups for hitters against the starting pitcher they'll be facing that day. You don't want to miss those. We'll help you build your DFS and your fantasy lineups every single day. Appreciate to all those behind the scenes who make this show possible, and of course to all you buddies out there who support the Butt Fumble Sports Network. We will be back next week, next Wednesday, with another weekly show of baseball. So until then, hope you throw strikes and cash your tickets. We'll talk to you soon.